Early morning fog gently enveloped the old houses in the southern suburbs of London. The faint sunlight pierced through the tall trees, reflecting off the damp cobblestones that still held the lingering chill of the night. Ellie Hayes pulled her thick coat tighter around herself as a cold winter breeze swept by. The narrow road leading to the cafe where she worked had become familiar, but this morning Ellie felt something different, as if something special was about to happen. The cafe nestled on the corner of the street, with white wooden window frames and a trellis of rose vines that had withered under the harsh winter. Ellie stepped inside, smiling at a few regular customers who were already seated, holding thick books or quietly sipping their coffee. Working at the cafe wasn't Ellie's dream job, but it was enough to cover her living expenses and care for her mother, Margaret Hayes, who suffered from chronic arthritis. Ellie's life was simple, without lavish parties or exotic trips. Her world revolved around work, the cafe, and the small home where her mother was resting. That morning, as Ellie returned home after her shift, she opened the mailbox by the gate. Inside was a thick envelope, different from the usual letters from the bank or utility bills. The handwriting on the front was neat and carefully written, addressed to her, Ellie Hayes. Ellie hesitated for a moment before tearing open the paper. She stood there under the porch as the wind lightly tousled her hair. When she opened the letter, her eyes scanned the printed lines. Invitation for an interview for the position of nanny at Bennett Manor, next Monday morning. Please arrive by 9 a.m. Ellie frowned. Bennett Manor. The name sounded familiar. It was the large house on the hill near the forest, surrounded by sprawling gardens. She had heard of it before, but had never set foot there. The Bennett family was one of the wealthiest and most influential in the area, but Ellie knew little about them. A nanny, she muttered, wondering if she should accept the invitation. Taking care of children wasn't her forte, but her current financial situation left her with little choice. That evening, as Ellie recounted the story to her mother while preparing dinner, Margaret smiled softly, her gaze gentle and understanding. You should try, Ellie. Sometimes opportunities come from places we least expect, she said, taking her daughter's hand. And who knows, working there might bring you something more than just a job. Ellie nodded, but a trace of hesitation still lingered in her heart. On Monday morning, Ellie dressed in a simple yet elegant outfit. She wrapped a gray wool scarf around her neck and stepped outside. As she stood before the large iron gates of Bennett Manor, Ellie couldn't help but feel small. She pressed the bell, and after a few seconds the gates slowly opened. An elderly butler with a stern yet kind expression led her inside. The house exuded a timeless charm, with Victorian architectural details, high ceilings, and oil paintings lining the hallways. As Ellie entered the grand living room, her heart suddenly tightened. Standing by the fireplace, bathed in the dim morning light, was a man whose silhouette was painfully familiar. Theo Bennett. Ellie froze, her heart racing as her hands unconsciously gripped the edge of her coat. There was no mistake. The man standing before her was Theo Bennett, her love from 7 years ago, the one who had left her behind. At that moment, Ellie realized this was more than just an interview. Fate had brought her back here to face the man she thought she had lost forever. Welcome to Soul Stories. Today we bring you a heartwarming tale. Let us know which city you're tuning in from around the world. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel to catch more meaningful stories. 7 years ago, London was bathed in the golden sunlight of summer. The riverside markets along the Thames became gathering spots for young people and tourists alike. Ellie Hayes, then just 22, often spent her late afternoons wandering through the vibrant stalls, enjoying the street music echoing from every corner. One Saturday afternoon, Ellie stopped in front of a small crowd gathered around a street performer. Among the bustling crowd, a young man with tousled brown hair and a worn guitar sat on a wooden stool, engrossed in his performance. His music was simple yet heartfelt, resonating deeply amid the lively atmosphere. Ellie found herself captivated by the sound, unpretentious yet touching something deep within her. As the song ended, Ellie stepped closer, dropping a coin into the wooden box in front of the young man. "The song you just played, is it your own composition?" she asked softly. The young man looked up, his warm brown eyes meeting Ellie's bright gaze. "Yes, it is. Thank you for listening." He smiled. a smile that felt like sunlight warming Ellie's heart on that summer day. That young man was Theodore Bennett. From that day forward, Ellie often stopped by the market every weekend afternoon, and each time she found Theo in the same corner, still engrossed in his music. Gradually, they became closer. They began dating after Theo's performances, sitting by the Thames, sharing stories about their lives, dreams, and future aspirations. Ellie loved Theo's passion and simplicity. He didn't care about becoming a successful businessman or chasing a grand career. All he wanted was to live through his music and lead a simple, happy life with someone he loved. Theo, in turn, cherished Ellie's sincerity and optimism. With her by his side, life felt lighter. Their love was simple yet sweet. The long summer afternoons drifted by, and Theo became an irreplaceable part of Ellie's life. They planned for the future, a small house by the river, a cozy cafe, and long nights filled with laughter. But harsh reality didn't allow those dreams to last forever. The conflict began when Theo's father discovered their relationship. William Bennett was a successful businessman who owned numerous properties in large companies in London. To him, Theo's future couldn't involve being a street musician, let alone being with an ordinary girl without status like Ellie. One evening, Theo received a call from his father. Ellie vividly remembered the worried look in his eyes as he listened, his hand tightening around his guitar as if it were the only thing anchoring him to the life he had chosen. "I have to leave London," Theo told Ellie the next day as they sat on a bench by the river. His voice was hoarse and his gaze drifted toward the rippling water. "My father wants me to take over a company branch abroad. I can't refuse." Ellie held his hand tightly. "We can find another way. You don't have to give up your dreams, Theo." "I don't have a choice, Ellie. If I don't go, my father will cut me off completely. I can't let my family turn their backs on me." Theo's words cut into Ellie's heart like a knife. She knew she couldn't stop him. No matter how deeply they loved each other, it wasn't enough to withstand the pressure from Theo's family. A week later, Theo left. Ellie never received a direct goodbye. All she found was a letter left on her windowsill. In it, Theo wrote that he didn't want to leave her, but he had no other choice. He promised to return one day when everything was settled, but Theo never came back. The following months were a dark time for Ellie. She returned to her daily routine, but the emptiness inside her lingered. Every Saturday afternoon, as she passed by the corner where Theo used to play, her heart ached. His stool sat empty, and his music remained only as a memory in her mind. Time passed, and Ellie gradually learned to move on from the pain, though the wound never fully healed. She immersed herself in work, focused on caring for her mother, and tried not to let herself drown in the past. But no matter how hard she tried, Theo remained a permanent fixture in her heart. And now, as Ellie stood before the grand gates of Bennett Manor, seeing him once again, all those memories flooded back, as vivid and powerful as if they had never faded. That morning, fog blanketed the outskirts of London, casting a soft gray veil over Bennett Manor. Ellie stood before the large iron gate, her heart a mix of apprehension and curiosity. Since receiving the interview invitation, she couldn't stop wondering about the family who owned the grand estate. Ellie adjusted the wool scarf wrapped around her neck, took a deep breath, and pressed the bell. The chime echoed through the quiet air, lingering as if stretching on forever. A moment later, the gate slowly opened, and an elderly butler stepped out, offering a gentle smile. "Miss Hayes, I presume. Please, come in." Ellie followed him through the expansive garden. The rose bushes were withered by the cold winter, but here and there wildflowers braved the harsh weather, standing tall as if defying the season. When the manor's front door opened, Ellie stepped inside and was immediately overwhelmed by the grandeur. High ceilings adorned with sparkling crystal chandeliers, a warm fireplace in the vast living room, and imposing oil portraits lining the walls exuded a timeless elegance. "Please wait here for a moment. Mr. Bennett will join you shortly." Ellie nodded, letting her eyes wander around the room until they stopped at an old guitar resting near the fireplace. The instrument stirred memories of summer afternoons by the Thames, where she once sat listening to Theo play. The sound of footsteps on the wooden floor pulled Ellie back to the present. As she turned, her heart seemed to stop. Standing before her was Theodore Bennett. Time stood still. Ellie's eyes widened, and her fingers instinctively tightened around the strap of her bag. Theo stood there, equally stunned, his gaze fixed on her, as if he couldn't believe what he was seeing. Ellie, his voice broke slightly, rough but filled with emotion. Ellie couldn't speak. The memories of their lost love, the pain of sudden separation, and the countless unanswered questions surged like a tidal wave. "You're the one interviewing for the nanny position?" Theo asked, his eyes never leaving hers. Ellie nodded slowly, her voice calm but professional. "I didn't know. You own this estate." Silence enveloped them for what felt like an eternity until a small voice echoed from the staircase. "Daddy, who's here?" Ellie looked up and saw a little girl, around 5 years old, with soft, curly brown hair. Her large, curious eyes sparkled as she gazed down at them. "This is Miss Hayes, sweetheart." Theo smiled, gently calling his daughter down. "She's here to interview for the nanny position." The girl trotted down the stairs, grasping Theo's hand and looking up at Ellie. "Hello, I'm Sophia," she chirped, her voice ringing like a bell. Ellie crouched slightly, offering a warm smile. "Hello, Sophia. It's lovely to meet you." Sophia tugged on Ellie's hand, asking innocently, "Will you be my nanny?" Ellie hesitated, her gaze briefly meeting Theo's. His eyes, no longer shocked, had softened, tinged with hope. "If you'd like me to be, I'd be happy to," Ellie answered gently. From that day forward, Ellie officially became Sophia's nanny. The little girl quickly grew attached to Ellie, as if they had known each other for years. Ellie soon realized that Sophia, despite her cheerful demeanor, was lonely. Although she lived in a grand estate, the absence of a mother's presence left a noticeable void. In the beginning, Ellie spent most of her time with Sophia, telling stories, playing games, and strolling through the garden. Even though Theo was often busy with work, he would occasionally pause to watch them from afar, his eyes contemplative. Yet every interaction with Theo brought a sense of unease to Ellie. Passing each other in the hallways or reading to Sophia by the fire, Ellie could feel Theo's gaze lingering on her. But he rarely said much, offering only small smiles or brief conversations. Ellie tried to maintain her distance, but every time she looked into Theo's eyes, memories of those summer afternoons returned. The music, the laughter, and the love they shared flooded back as vividly as if it had happened yesterday. One evening, after tucking Sophia into bed, Ellie stood in the long corridor, gazing out at the garden bathed in pale moonlight. Theo approached from behind, stopping quietly by her side. "Thank you for taking care of Sophia," Theo said, his voice low and sincere. Ellie turned slightly, unsure of how to respond. "She's a wonderful child. I'm glad to have this opportunity." Theo remained silent for a moment, his tone hesitant when he finally spoke. "I never expected to see you here, Ellie. It's been so long." Ellie smiled faintly, though her heart stirred. "Yes, it has." Another silence fell over them, filled only by the rustling of wind through the trees. But this time the quiet between them felt less awkward, almost comforting. Perhaps fate had indeed brought them back together, and though neither of them said it aloud, they both understood that what was lost might still be found, with time and courage. Ellie quickly settled into life at Bennett Manor, and with each passing day, she felt subtle changes stirring within her. Despite her efforts to maintain distance from Theo, she couldn't deny that his presence and the memories they shared quietly crept into her thoughts. Since Ellie's arrival, Sophia seemed to have found a true companion. The little girl clung to Ellie at every opportunity, as if afraid she might disappear at any moment. Sophia's innocence and playful spirit made it easy for Ellie to open her heart. Each afternoon, Ellie would take Sophia to the garden behind the manor, where ancient trees lined the edges of a lush green lawn. Sophia's favorite activity was playing tag among the rose bushes, unconcerned about the dirt stains on her pristine white dress. "Miss Ellie, can you tell me a story about fairies?" Sophia beamed, tugging on Ellie's hand as they sat beneath the shade of an old oak tree. Ellie gently brushed a curl from Sophia's face and smiled. "Of course, but tonight, you have to promise to go to bed early." Sophia nodded eagerly, her bright eyes shimmering with excitement. That evening, after bath time and in her cozy pajamas, Sophia curled beneath the blankets, her eyes slowly closing to Ellie's soft storytelling. Tales of fairies, knights, and enchanted forests became their bridge, a comforting presence that brought Sophia peace and security. "Good night, Sophia," Ellie whispered, pressing a gentle kiss on the little girl's forehead. Before drifting into sleep, Sophia murmured, "I wish you were my mummy, Miss Ellie." Ellie froze, gazing at Sophia as the child's eyes remained shut, her lips still curled into a faint smile. From that moment, Ellie's affection for Sophia deepened. Caring for her wasn't just a job anymore. Sophia had become a cherished part of Ellie's life. Every evening after Sophia went to bed, Ellie often sat by the window in her room, reading or writing letters to her mother. But over time, that routine shifted. More frequently, Theo would appear at her door with 2 cups of tea in hand. "Would you like to sit with me for a while?" Theo's voice was calm, his eyes warm with quiet longing. Ellie hesitated at first, but eventually agreed each time. They would sit in the drawing room, the fire crackling softly, warding off the evening chill. "Sophia sleeps better since you've arrived," Theo remarked one evening, breaking the silence. "Thank you for spending so much time with her." Ellie shook her head lightly. "Sophia's wonderful. I feel lucky to be looking after her." Their eyes met for a brief moment, and Ellie felt an undeniable closeness. Yet neither of them spoke further, as if afraid any words might shatter the fragile peace between them. Evenings like these slowly became a habit. They talked about simple things: the weather, Sophia's habits, and work. But occasionally, memories of the past seeped into their conversations, leaving Ellie feeling wistful. "Do you remember those evenings by the Thames when you'd listen to me play guitar?" Theo asked one night. Ellie looked up and smiled faintly. "How could I forget? Those were some of the happiest days of my life." Theo fell silent, regret flickering in his eyes. One evening, as a light drizzle tapped against the windows, Ellie sat near the fireplace, listening to the rhythmic patter of rain. Theo entered, carrying 2 cups of tea as usual. But tonight felt different. Instead of sitting, Theo stood near the fire, gazing at Ellie as though he had been holding something back for far too long. "Ellie," his voice was soft but heavy with emotion, "I never stopped loving you." Ellie's eyes lifted, widening slightly. She said nothing, waiting. Theo's voice trembled as he continued. "When I left London, I searched for you when I returned. But no one knew where you had gone. My family did everything they could to keep us apart." His words struck Ellie like a cold wind, dissolving the barriers she had spent years building around her heart. "You looked for me?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Yes, but by the time I returned, you were gone," Theo replied. "I thought you'd moved on. Forgotten me. I was wrong, Ellie. I regret not fighting harder for us." Tears welled in Ellie's eyes as she turned away, trying to conceal her emotions. Theo stepped closer, gently brushing his hand against hers. "I know we can't change the past, but I want to make things right. I want to be with you, and with Sophia." Ellie gazed into his eyes, seeing the sincerity and pain that had long remained hidden. She inhaled deeply, her heart pounding beneath her ribs. I never stopped loving you either, Theo. But I'm scared." "Scared of what, Ellie?" Theo asked softly. "Scared that we'll lose each other again," she admitted, her voice trembling. Theo squeezed her hand gently, his gaze unwavering. "I won't let that happen. Not this time. We'll protect what we have, together." Ellie bowed her head, tears slipping onto the back of Theo's hand. But this time, they were tears of hope. Outside, the rain continued to fall, but within Ellie's heart, the sky seemed to brighten at last. Ellie returned to her room that evening with a heavy heart after Theo's heartfelt confession. The fire in the hearth had long since died out, leaving only faint embers glowing softly in the dark. She sat by the window, gazing into the misty garden as a light drizzle coated the glass panes. Her eyes were distant, and her heart swirled with conflicting emotions. Ellie knew that her feelings for Theo had never truly faded. From the moment she saw him again, her heart had raced, but reason kept reminding her of the past. The pain of their separation, the scars left behind, had never fully healed. She remembered the loneliness she felt standing in the summer markets, staring at the empty bench where Theo used to play. The ache of being left behind, the silence that stretched without an explanation. It all lingered like a scar that refused to fade. Could she allow herself to walk the same path again, risking further heartbreak? Each time Ellie looked at Sophia, Theo's daughter, her heart felt heavier. Sophia was bright and full of emotion, but beneath her cheerful exterior lay the void of a mother's love. Despite living in a grand manor, the little girl longed for the warmth and affection of a complete family. Sophia had delicate features, with bouncy brown curls and deep blue eyes that mirrored the summer sky. Those eyes, so much like Theo's, sparkled with curiosity and mischief, but sometimes held a quiet sadness that spoke of things the child could not yet articulate. Ellie could sense it whenever Sophia wrapped her arms around her or sought her comfort after a nightmare. One late afternoon, Ellie visited her mother at their modest cottage on the edge of the woods. The small home retained its familiar warmth, and Mrs. Margaret Hayes sat by the window knitting as the golden sunset filtered through. As Ellie entered, her mother looked up, offering a knowing smile. "You seem troubled, Ellie," Margaret said, setting down her knitting. "Something happened at the Bennett estate, didn't it?" Ellie sat beside her, letting out a quiet sigh. I saw Theo again, Mother." Margaret's gentle nod suggested she had anticipated this moment. "I thought this day might come." Ellie twisted her hands nervously in her lap. "He told me he never stopped loving me, that he tried to find me when he returned, but I had already disappeared. I don't know what to do. A part of me wants to believe him, but I'm afraid everything will repeat itself." Margaret placed her hand over Ellie's, giving it a comforting squeeze. "I understand your fear, Ellie, but sometimes life grants us second chances. The question is whether you're brave enough to accept them." Ellie's eyes shimmered with unshed tears as she looked at her mother. "But what if I'm left behind again?" Margaret's smile was tender. "You can't live your life in fear, my dear. Love is a journey, and sometimes that journey takes us through storms. But remember, not everyone gets the chance to meet their lost love again. If you don't try, you'll never know what might have been." Sophia was the key that gently pulled Ellie from the protective wall she had built around herself. The child grew increasingly attached to Ellie, seeking her companionship and trust. "My mom left when I was little," Sophia confided one afternoon as Ellie braided her hair. "Dad never says bad things about her, but I know she didn't want to stay." Ellie paused, wrapping her arms around Sophia in a gentle hug. "You have your father, and so many people who love you," Ellie reassured her. "I'm sure your mother loved you in her own way. But I wish someone like you were my mum." Sophia's gaze met Ellie's, her eyes filled with innocent longing. Ellie felt a lump in her throat. From that day, Ellie began to notice the small yet unwavering signs of Theo's dedication. He spent time with Sophia, reading her bedtime stories and drawing with her by the fire. Sometimes Ellie saw him standing at the door to Sophia's room, watching over her as she slept, his eyes brimming with affection. But what touched Ellie the most was Theo's kindness toward her mother. One Saturday afternoon, Ellie returned to her cottage and was surprised to find Theo sitting in the living room with Margaret. They laughed softly, sharing a light-hearted conversation. "What are you doing here?" Ellie asked, astonished. Theo stood and placed a bag of fruit and a few boxes of supplements on the table. "I wanted to check in on your mother. She mentioned she hadn't been feeling well, so I thought I'd bring a few things." After Theo left, Margaret turned to Ellie with a gentle look. "He truly cares for you, and for Sophia. I can see it in his eyes." Margaret's words lingered in Ellie's mind throughout the evening. Despite her lingering reservations, Ellie knew she couldn't ignore her feelings forever. The time had come to face the past and the love she thought she had lost. Sophia became the bridge, the light that gently pulled Ellie and Theo closer. And through Sophia, Ellie realized that love isn't just about waiting. Sometimes it takes courage to embrace it once more. As time passed, each day spent with Sophia and Theo made Ellie feel the change in her heart more clearly. The walls she had built around herself gradually crumbled, giving way to a sense of peace and happiness she never thought she would experience again. That morning, soft sunlight filtered through the trees outside the Bennett estate's window. Ellie and Sophia were arranging flowers in the garden when Theo stepped out. He stopped, quietly watching the two from a distance. The scene seemed to etch itself into his mind, a small, simple, yet warm family. Ellie turned around and met Theo's gaze. She smiled gently, but this time there was no awkwardness or hesitation. Perhaps everything Theo had done over the past months had shown Ellie that his love for her was genuine, and he had persistently proven it. That afternoon, as Sophia napped, Theo and Ellie sat on the porch. The peaceful air was filled only with the chirping of birds in the garden. "Ellie," Theo began, his eyes reflecting sincerity, "I know I hurt you a lot in the past, but I really want to start over. Not just for me, but for Sophia. I want her to have a complete family." Ellie remained silent, but her eyes were softer than ever. "I've thought a lot, Theo," she replied gently. "To be honest, I was afraid that things would repeat themselves. But then I realized I don't want to miss the chance to be happy. Sophia is part of the reason, but I think the biggest reason is that I still love you." Theo took Ellie's hand, holding it tightly as if afraid she would vanish. "Thank you for giving me another chance." They sat there side by side with no further words needed. The silence was filled with understanding and forgiveness. That spring, the estate's garden bloomed with vibrant flowers. Sophia joyfully ran through the marigold beds, laughing under the gentle sunlight. Ellie and Theo stood nearby, watching her together. "She's growing up so fast," Ellie whispered, her eyes shimmering with happiness. Theo smiled but said nothing. Instead, he pulled a small box from his pocket, stepped in front of Ellie, and knelt down. Ellie was stunned, her eyes widening. Sophia stopped running, curiously watching them. "Ellie," Theo opened the box, revealing a delicate silver ring with a sparkling gemstone. "I've missed out on too much time, but now I want to spend the rest of my life making it up to you. Will you marry me and help me build a family with Sophia?" Ellie's eyes welled with tears. She looked at Theo, the man who had endured so much to return to her, and at Sophia, the little girl whose eyes were filled with innocent hope. Ellie nodded softly, her smile radiant. "I will." Sophia cheered excitedly, rushing to hug them both. "So I'm really going to have a mom." Theo wrapped Sophia in his arms, pulling both of them close. He placed a gentle kiss on Ellie's forehead, as if sealing a promise for their future. From that day on, Ellie officially moved into the Bennett estate. She was no longer Sophia's nanny, but became a true part of their small family. Afternoons in the garden became livelier and warmer as the three of them laughed and played together. Sophia constantly told her friends about how she was about to have a wonderful mother like Ellie. The wedding took place on a bright morning beneath the lush green canopy of the garden where they had spent so much time. Margaret, Ellie's mother, sat in the front row, smiling contentedly as she watched her daughter walk down the aisle in a pure white dress. As Theo took Ellie's hand, their eyes met, full of love and understanding. They had endured pain and loss, but in the end, they had found each other again. "I promise to always love and protect you," Theo whispered during the ceremony. "I know," Ellie replied, her eyes shining, "and I promise the same." The wedding was simple but filled with joy and happiness. Sophia was the loudest cheerer when her parents shared their first kiss as husband and wife. After the wedding, life at the Bennett estate was filled with laughter. Ellie continued to care for Sophia, but now as her mother. Theo spent more time with his family, reducing his workload to enjoy quiet moments with Ellie and Sophia. In the evenings, the three of them sat by the fireplace, with Ellie reading to Sophia while Theo held her in his arms. By the flickering firelight, Ellie realized that she had finally found her place. Though challenges might still lie ahead, Ellie knew that with love and perseverance, they could overcome anything. And this time, she was no longer afraid, because she knew she was holding on to true happiness. Sometimes life offers us a chance to start over, if we are brave enough to seize it. Love isn't just about beautiful moments. It's about patience, understanding, and the willingness to forgive. Rebuilding a relationship requires effort and appreciation from both sides. Through Ellie and Theo's story, we learn that the presence of loved ones, even as small as Sophia, can be the glue that binds and guides us back to the happiness we thought was lost. Thank you for following this story. Please rate it from 1 to 5 stars, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our Soul Stories channel. Your support is the motivation for us to continue bringing more great stories. Ha ha!